For 30 years, my mom worshipped my unemployed brother while dismissing every success I ever achieved, until her golden boy's failure ruined her retirement party in front of everyone she cared about. My mother wore black to my wedding, not navy, not charcoal, black floor-length, the kind of dress you'd wear to a funeral. And when my aunt asked her why, my mother said, loud enough for the photographer to hear, loud enough that it's probably in the background audio of my own wedding video, that she was mourning her baby boy losing me to some woman. Her baby boy was my brother Jake. He was 31 years old. He wasn't dating my wife. He wasn't dating anyone. He didn't even know our mother had said it until my aunt told him at the reception, laughing like it was the sweetest thing she'd ever heard a mother say. That's the family I grew up in. And it took me until I was standing in my own backyard watching my mother's retirement party collapse in real time on the other side of a 6ft cedar fence to finally understand why. My name is Marcus, I'm 34. I'm a systems engineer, and for the last 6 years I've led hardware integration for a defense contractor outside Huntsville, Alabama. The kind of job where half of what I do is classified enough that I can't even tell my own mother the details, not that she ever asked. I'd been the older kid, the responsible one, since before I could tie my shoes. My brother Jake is 2 years younger. Growing up, our house ran on a single rule nobody ever said out loud, but everybody understood completely. Jake mattered, I didn't, not in a cruel, obvious way. Nobody hit me, nobody screamed at me. Just a quiet, constant erosion, so slow you don't notice the shoreline's gone until you're standing in water. I graduated valedictorian of my high school class. My mother's contribution to that achievement, repeated at 2 separate family gatherings, was that Jake had helped me study. Jake was failing sophomore year chemistry at the time. I know because I was the one who drove him to summer school that year, not the other way around. I got a full engineering scholarship to Georgia Tech. 4 years, tuition, room, board, the whole thing. On the strength of a robotics portfolio I'd built in a garage with parts scavenged from a Radio Shack that doesn't exist anymore. My mother's response, delivered at Thanksgiving in front of 12 relatives, was that it was probably some kind of diversity thing, and wasn't it nice that schools were being so generous these days? I didn't correct her, I'd stopped correcting her by then. Correcting her had never once changed the outcome, it just gave her a new way to be disappointed in me for arguing. Jake, meanwhile, got a part-time job folding polo shirts at a sporting goods store in the mall. My mother threw him a party, an actual party. 12 guests, a sheet cake from the Publix bakery with "So proud of my successful son" piped across it in blue frosting. I have a photo of that cake. I've kept it for 9 years, not because it hurts anymore, but because on the bad days, it reminds me I'm not making any of this up. She called Jake every single morning at 7:15 to wish him luck before his shift. I know the exact time because I once heard it happen while I was visiting, sitting 15 ft away, having just told her the week before about a satellite component I'd helped design that was, at that moment, orbiting the Earth. She never called to ask how that was going, not once, not that week, not any week after. The escalation loops in my family didn't feel like escalation while I was living them. Each one just felt like the next data point in a pattern I'd already accepted as unchangeable, and I told myself every time that it didn't matter, that I didn't need her validation, that I was fine. I told myself that the week I led final integration testing on a satellite payload contract worth an 8-figure number I'm still not allowed to disclose. My mother's question when I mentioned it over the phone was whether the extra hours meant I'd have less time to help Jake polish his resume. Jake had been unemployed for 4 months at that point, between the shirt folding job and whatever came next. I told myself that again when Jake got promoted to shift supervisor at a different sporting goods store, an assistant manager title at a retail chain, $41,000 a year, a job I am certain is honest. Decent work and nothing to be ashamed of. Rented a billboard, an actual highway billboard, off I-565, $3,100 according to the invoice Jake later showed me, laughing, half embarrassed, half thrilled. Jake got promoted, so proud, with a photo of him in his work polo, 40 ft tall, visible from 3 lanes of traffic for an entire month. People I hadn't spoken to since high school started texting me pictures of it. My old track coach sent it with a laughing emoji and the caption, "Your bro made it big." Lol, I sat in my apartment that night and did something I'm not proud of. I open my own LinkedIn profile and read my job title 4 times. Almost like I needed to remind myself it was real, that the 8-figure contract was real, that the satellite was real, because my mother had somehow made me feel, if only for one evening, like none of it mattered compared to a highway billboard. That same week, I called a therapist for the first time in my life, Dr. Renee Ashford, a licensed clinical psychologist in Huntsville who specializes in family of origin dynamics. I remember sitting in her office describing the billboard while she quietly wrote something down. When I asked what she'd written, she turned the notepad toward me. In neat handwriting it said, "This is not about Jake, this has never been about Jake." I didn't fully understand what she meant until the day of the party. My mother retired from her 31-year career as a claims processor at an insurance company that April. She announced in the family group chat that she was throwing herself a retirement party and wanted Jake, specifically, to plan the entire event. Jake had never planned anything more complicated than a fantasy football draft. He'd never booked a venue, called a caterer, or sent an invitation that wasn't just a group text with a pizza emoji. As I read her message, something settled in my chest that had been building for nearly 30 years. It wasn't exactly anger, it was recognition. This was a test my mother had created for Jake to succeed at in a way she'd never once created a test for me to pass, because she'd made her choice years ago about which of us she was rooting for. I didn't argue in the group chat. I congratulated her, offered to help if Jake needed anything, and went back to my own life, which already had plans for that exact weekend. My company was celebrating its 5th anniversary that same Saturday. My director, Patricia Kowalski, who had led operations at the firm for 11 years, had organized the event months earlier. The venue had been confirmed in February, the caterer booked in March, and everything was set: a large tent, a DJ, and a guest list of about 60 coworkers, clients, and their families. Since I have a large backyard and a good working relationship with Patricia, she'd asked if we could host the event at my house instead of renting a hall. I agreed back in February, nearly 3 months before my mother had even announced her retirement, let alone the party. I want to be clear about that timeline because it matters. My event was never planned to compete with hers. It was already on the calendar long before hers was announced. 3 days before the party, Jake called me in full panic. He had no venue, no invitations, no food, nothing. He'd spent 2 months telling Mom everything was under control while doing absolutely nothing. It was the same pattern I'd watched him repeat with every job, every relationship, and every responsibility he'd ever taken on. "You have to fix this," he said quietly. "She can't find out I dropped the ball. Please, Marcus, you're good at this." I said no. He called me selfish. He said I was ruining her special day, that after 31 years of work she deserved better, and that I was choosing a company celebration over my own mother's happiness. I let him finish before answering. "I offered to help you 2 months ago, Jake. You told me you had everything under control. I'm not fixing something I was never allowed to handle." He hung up. And for the first time, I didn't step in to rescue him. The day arrived, a warm Saturday in late May, 78 degrees with clear blue skies. It was the kind of weather that made any outdoor gathering look perfect, which only made what happened next even more obvious. By 1:00 p.m., my backyard looked like something out of a magazine. Patricia's event coordinator, Diane Ferris, who'd spent 19 years organizing corporate events around Huntsville, had the tent set up, the caterer's smoker running since 9:00 that morning, and the DJ. Marcus Webb, no relation, was finishing the sound check. We even joked about sharing the same first name. Around 60 guests arrived over the next hour: coworkers, spouses, clients, close friends. There was laughter, music, and the smell of fresh barbecue drifting through the neighborhood. On the other side of the fence, my mother's retirement party was quietly falling apart. Only about 15 people showed up, mostly relatives who came out of obligation. There were no decorations, no music because Jake had forgotten to rent the speakers he'd promised. The only food was a family-size bag of gas station chips Jake had picked up on the way over. I even know the receipt totaled $6.49 because he showed it to me weeks later as if it somehow explained everything. My mother stood there in a dress she'd clearly bought for the occasion, looking over 31 years of hard work, while the smell of catered barbecue floated over the fence into a party that had almost nothing to offer its guests. At 2:40 p.m. she walked through the gates separating our yards, The look on her face was one I'd never seen directed at me before. It wasn't disappointment, I knew that expression well. This was closer to panic. She quietly asked if we could combine the parties, send some of the catering over, let the DJ play for both groups, and spare her the embarrassment of hosting a retirement celebration with nothing but gas station chips. I explained that this was a corporate event planned months in advance and that I couldn't simply redirect Patricia's catering contract or the company's budget at the last minute. I even pulled up the email chain with Diane Ferris on my phone and showed her the February booking confirmation, dated 6 weeks before she'd even announced her retirement party. She looked at it for only a couple of seconds before accusing me of scheduling everything on purpose just to upstage her. After 31 years of work, she truly believed I'd somehow arranged an entire corporate anniversary celebration simply to embarrass her. That's when Jake walked over to the catering table. He didn't ask permission. He simply started picking up plates from Diane's serving line, plates prepared for the 60 invited guests, and tried carrying them through the gate to feed the people next door. I stepped in front of him. "Jake, this is a private corporate event. I can't let you take food that's been prepared for a contracted guest count." He reached around me anyway and grabbed 2 plates. So I calmly told the serving staff that no one from next door was to be served. It wasn't meant to be cruel. It was the same boundary I would have set for any uninvited guest at any company event, and everyone standing there understood that. I think, deep down, Jake understood it too. Still, his face turned bright red. He started shouting loudly enough for both backyards to hear. He accused me of always thinking I was better than him, of always looking down on him. 31 years of resentment poured out in less than a minute, right in front of 60 of my coworkers and the remaining guests at my mother's party. And none of it, not a single word, was really about the food. My mother came rushing through the gate moments later, demanding to know why I was causing a scene at her retirement party, as though it hadn't started hours earlier when the speakers never arrived. I stayed calm. Without realizing it, I'd spent 30 years practicing that kind of calm. Then I asked her one simple question while both backyards watched. "Name one achievement of mine you've ever acknowledged, just one." She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I waited. I wasn't trying to trap her, or maybe I was. I've thought about that a lot since. I waited a few seconds, watching her search for anything: the valedictorian speech, the scholarship, the satellite contract, the 8-figure project. 6 years of a career she'd never once asked about. Finally, she said, "You've always been so self-sufficient. You never needed my support the way Jake does." That was her answer. 30 years of silence, and my only crime had been not needing her enough. I realized then that self-sufficient wasn't praise. It was proof she'd never had to show up for me because I'd learned by age 9 not to expect her to. But her oldest friend, Alyssa Reyes, understood. She quietly told my mother, "Maybe you should look at what's actually happening here." My mother accused her of taking sides, but Alyssa calmly replied, "Real friends tell hard truths. Everyone here has watched this happen for years, Linda." The whispers started among my mother's own guests. My aunts exchanged knowing looks, and for the first time, my mother had no one left to blame but herself. She didn't apologize that day. She left early with Jake, and for weeks my family stopped speaking to me. About a month later, Alyssa called and told me my mother had finally broken down after her doctor said her chest pain was caused by stress. 2 months after the party, my mother texted and asked me to lunch. For the first time, she asked real questions about my satellite project. Near the end, she quietly said, "I don't know why I did that to you. I thought you didn't need it." I think that made it easier. It wasn't a full apology, but it was the first honest thing she'd ever said about it. 6 months later, Jake called too and admitted, "I think I let her use me against you. I'm sorry. I don't know if my mother will ever fully understand those 30 years, but I no longer need her to." The day the truth came out in her own backyard, in front of 75 people, was enough.